So good evening, everyone. It's 6:30 in South Africa. Welcome to webinar number 12. And I'll introduce our speakers tonight. We're quite privileged enough to have two speakers tonight because it's quite a sensitive, not a sensitive topic, but a topic that we need to be made aware of, and it's something that we need to take forward, especially in this time where we are now. We didn't have a lot of opportunity to be on the field, but a lot of opportunity to look after ourselves. So just a bit of context on these webinars. So these webinars were started by a group of coaches that just wanted to share ideas, and now we're in week 12 already. So we have grown. Tonight I see special mention to I see Coach Joey's on here from that recently been appointed as the Blue Bulls coach. So welcome to you, sir. And then we're quite privileged to have, I think it's nearly the whole staff of the Harlequins in the UK that joined us tonight. So David, so you got your work cut out for you. So we need to talk that British tonight, all that British.
Yeah.
So welcome to you guys from the UK, and then I've seen everyone pop in, some of the old faces are here as well, and then so I'm firstly going to introduce David, and then I'm going to chat a bit about a topic, and then I'm going to introduce also someone that's going to assist him tonight to provide the coaches just on clarity on certain things. So David has coached at Super Rugby level, Currie Cup level, Junior level, Varsity Cup level, so he's got vast experience. But one thing that I enjoy chatting to David, first thing is that when he tells you he's going to give you a call for 10 minutes, it's never 10 minutes, it's always longer. So you need to put aside time to chat to him. He's always a learner. He's a learner of the game. He's a student of rugby. He wants to impact people's lives, and that's where his passion lies. Then tonight he'll be supported by his sister-in-law. But before I introduce her, I'm just a bit worried. Did she apply all these things when she allowed him into the family? All these questionnaires and stuff. Did he go through those questionnaires in order to fit the mold of the family? So I'll discuss that in person. So I'm going to introduce Hayley. So Hayley's an educational psychologist. I can imagine you're quite busy during this time. She did an MSc at WITS, but I also see early on a CV that she also had a stint in KwaZulu-Natal. So Hayley, it's great having you here as well to provide a bit of clarity. I think you're bringing a different angle. You're coming more from a psychological point of view. And I think that sometimes we as coaches neglect the psychological part and looking at yourself, because we so focused on applying all the knowledge, the sports psychology, the mentors, the leadership development on the players, but we neglect the coaching part. So Hayley, welcome, and thanks for availing yourself and making your time available and freeing yourself up. So David, all yours. I don't know if Hayley want to say hello to everyone first, and then we get going.
Hayley, do you want to greet everybody?
Yes, just thank you for the introduction and hello.
Hello, Hayley. Welcome.
For tonight.
Yeah, but I'm worried about how can you allow David into the family without going through all these tests and stuff? Right?
I'm still worried.
Are you still worried? Okay, so at least you're worried. Then you can do something about it. So David, all yours, brother.
Oh, first things first, Mr. Wilbur. Thank you, Dr. Wilbur Clark. Let me address you properly. Thanks for your willingness and for your trust to allow me and Hayley, to share some of our thoughts surrounding this specific topic. And once again, thank you for putting this together. I mean, I've also been in a couple of webinars where I've just listened. It's been of huge help. I mean, I really believe that I'm a better coach before I went, as I went in before the lockdown, and what I am now currently after the lockdown. So thank you for your time and your willingness to host this type of events. Coaches, from my side, thank you as well. I know we all got busy schedules. I know we all got families, children, wives, girlfriends, husbands, and thank you for just making time to jump onto this webinar today. Just before I start, a couple of disclaimers. I don't know everything. Hence Hayley being with me, co-presenting with me. But this is just my journey. I've been a professional rugby player. I've been a professional coach. I still am. I don't know for how long I will still be. You know, we get hired and fired. We never know what the journey will bring. But this has been my journey. I'm married with a beautiful woman, Mandy, Hayley's sister. I've got 2 beautiful kids, Kenya, 11, and Eden, 8 years old. So this is just my experiences from being a rugby player, being a coach, being a father, being a dad, and how all those things have challenged me up till date. And how does this transfer into coaching? So allow me just to share. Well, if you can just keep on talking to me. The moment you can see the screen, please holler.
I'll do that.
What do you see?
I'm still seeing your dreads and Lapid Levy and then Sean Long.
Okay. Now, Wilbur?
Nothing on this side. Something is happening now. There we go.
All right. Do you see that?
Yes, we can.
All right, gentlemen, this is always a scary thing because once the screen comes out, I cannot see you. So all of a sudden, my ego becomes alive. I don't feel enough because I don't feel connected to people. I get a lot of energy from seeing people's facial reactions, and I cannot see it at the moment. Just a bit on SASB. SASB is just the business. It stands for South African Sports Business Incubation. So my passionate is just in short, how can I get rugby coaches to understand the importance of having a plan B? Like I said, we get hired and fired. So if we get fired, do we have a plan B that can sustain us and sustain our families? So my passion is just to assist coaches to incubate their businesses, whatever it is, get them enough support so they can get their business on the go. Just in short, what SASB is, so if you see the logo, that's what it stands for. The topic for tonight, conscious coaching, and the impact it has on building an attack system. So here we got a very familiar individual, Morpheus. I believe we all know him from the Matrix. So I want to use this specific image, you know, to really drive the backdrop of what I want to share today. I mean, if we think of it about the movie, Morpheus poses the question to Neo. Neo, do you want the red pill or the blue pill? Blue pill, if you take the blue pill, you wake up and you just live your life as it was before. You'll forget about everything. But if you take the red pill, Neo, you'll stay in Wonderland, and I'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. So I think that's what I'm offering to you guys today, and it's always a choice whether we want to move into the unconsciousness and really find out what's happening there, or just stay unconscious. I think that's what Morpheus offered Neo, and that's what I'm offering you guys today. And it's always up to our willingness to make a decision. So I hope that the coaches on this platform today will choose the red pill and then go on a journey with me and Hayley and the rest of the coaches to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. What is conscious coaching? Just a simple definition: developing in self-awareness and understanding the impact of your internal world on your environment and those around you. So that just in layman's terms. I'm not a psychologist, that's why Hayley is there. So I asked Hayley, how can we really make these concepts come alive for coaches and let us all understand? So that's just a simple definition of what conscious coaching is. The development of self-awareness. What is happening within our unconscious? And really understanding what it is and becoming aware of it and understanding the impact that it has on our internal world and our environment and those around you. So, sorry for this. I couldn't get away of really getting this video within my presentation. So allow me just to share this. Sorry for the delay. I think the video is important in terms of... Wilbur, do you see this video?
Yeah,
Wilbur?
you can see it. You can see it. You can even make it bigger as well if you want to.
Let's play it from here.
Pay close attention to what you are feeling. This may be a place that you might walk on the beach and wade in the water. Now, let's watch a replay of the exact same beach with one simple change. Did you notice how the background music...
Hayley, you up, girl?
Hello again. I mean, I guess this kind of just is just a way for us to symbolically show you something about what David spoke about, you know, right at the beginning, about what conscious coaching is. And I guess what we're saying is that in a way, just like the shark music, or that very frightening music, or the other serene music, impacts on the way you see the space or the way you see the environment, is exactly what we're saying. That the music represents what's going on inside of us, and in fact, in a way, that really clouds or changes what we see. I know the video was distorting a little bit, but you can actually feel your chest beating a bit faster and wondering what's coming next, and yet it was the exact same space. And the point, I think, that we're just trying to raise, and which we will really try to reiterate, is that your internal world and what's going on within yourself as a coach, it impacts on the way in which you see yourself, but it also impacts on the way in which you see players, and it impacts on the way in which you see the space around you. It impacts on your environment. And I mean, as it says there in the next slide, your internal space, in fact, influences the player's capacity to see, create, and utilize space, which I think David's going to speak about in a lot more detail. Thank you.
So for me as an attack coach, and is also an attack presentation in terms of how does our consciousness impact on us building an attack system. So I would like to really bring the two together tonight in terms of that internal space within us as coaches and how it influences us seeing the space on the outside. I mean, as attack coaches, we're all about seeing space, identifying, using it, holding it, creating within that space. But if our space on the inside is clouded with different things, we won't have the capacity to see the space on the outside. So just to give us an interlude as well in terms of the attack spaces, the New Zealanders also speaks about the 9 spaces on the rugby field. I see Nick Evans is here, if I didn't mistake. I mean, he's a New Zealander. They're all about those 9 spaces. So if I go through them, that space in the air, that air battle. So that's what we see a lot. I mean, the box played a great game, or had a great approach through Faf and the wingers launching those contestables and then getting that ball back, and what effect it then has on the defensive pitcher if you manage to get that ball back. So that's the air space. The next space is that space in behind. A lot of teams has a rush defense, as we've seen in the World Cup. England really in the face of the attack. So a lot of times what happens is that space in behind becomes available. The next space is the space through. So how does that picture look in front of you? Are they widely spread? We won't be able to go around them, but we can go through them. Next space is the space in front of you. So that's the linear space that we're speaking about. And my ability to understand that linear space, when can I play flat? When do I need to play a bit deeper to create some time and space for me on the ball? That is the space in front of us. The space under, sorry, I didn't know how to create this picture of the space under, but what that space basically means is if a ball carrier carries the ball, his ability to win the height battle, willing to get lower, getting his shoulders lower than the defensive player's shoulders, and still be in a place of strength where he puts himself in a position to win that collision. Even if we take it further, if the ball carrier hits the deck, the first arrival from the attacking side, how can he win the shoulder battle, the space under, get his shoulder lower than the defense first arrival to really get under him and then put himself biomechanically in a stronger position to win that battle. The next space is around. A lot of teams get congested sometimes from different rocks on the field. And do we have the ability as players within your attacking system or in their attacking system to see that there's space around? And how can we really keep the team congested so that we can use that space moving around them? Second space is that lateral space next to me. And then the second last one is the space you're in. So what I first want to unpack for us is really the 9th space. And that is the space between your ears. And we spoke about a bit about it in the interlude, in the introduction. That's the space within. Hayles?
Sure. I mean, I think this here, what we're talking about, and David's put it as the internal working model, which is really a psychological approach. And what we're saying in very simple terms is, this is what David is suggesting, is that to find those spaces that were on the field, something between your ears, which we're talking about, the mind, needs to be considered and also needs to be thought about. And that is, as a coach, you have an internal working model, and that is the mental representation of how you have developed your psyche or your psychology over your early experiences of growing up. That then becomes a template. It becomes the backdrop, like that music that plays, like we showed in the beginning, of how your relationships look, and how you understand, how you're able to predict, how you're able to control, and how you're able to manipulate your environment. So that internal working model has an impact on the way in which you relate to others, relate to yourself, and in turn, the way you see the world and relate to the world and your environment. And in this case, the way you relate to the spaces on the field. That's all impacted by what's going on, your own experiences. So if I mean, David will go in a little bit more detail, but what your experiences are, the anxieties and defenses and fears that you've kind of internalized, how that will impact on your capacities to play freely, to be creative, to allow players to be creative on the field. So that's, in essence, what an internal working model is. Is that okay, David? Enough?
You can continue.
People can ask questions. I see some comments on the side, so let's hear if people have some questions about that.
Go for it, Wilbur.
Yeah, so I want to start off with a question. And let's say a player comes from a school system where his role was to just carry running, to take up the ball. How do you change that approach in a player? How do you develop that? Because once that player is in that mold or that mood, he feels in a comfort zone because he's been exposed to that. So how do you get him out of that comfort zone and say, this is how you can explore. This is how you can improve your game. You can be like a player that can, an all-rounded player. So how do we change that within a player?
Hayley, do you want to have a go from a psychological?
I have one thought about that. And maybe, is it Wilbur?
Yeah.
Yes. Dr. Wilbur.
Doctor. I mean, I guess I have one thought about that, and in terms of thinking about the space between his ears, I would say what would be interesting to talk to him about and think with him about is why that's his approach. Where does that come from? And perhaps it's a defensiveness because he's afraid of taking risks, and what's that about? So I think an open conversation with him about why that choice, or why, and of course we can say that's what he was taught, but the fact that he struggles to make a shift means something in his internal working model resonates with that approach, and to try and think with him about what that's about, I think would be a good start.
I think
I'm sure David's got more technical and more helpful.
Well, that was great, Hal.
Practical ways to help.
Well, but I'm thinking from a coach perspective, it is difficult to develop new habits. Because they say when we're under pressure, we function out of the unconscious. So there's no time to think. So whatever if the pressure comes, we react from our unconscious mind. That's that second nature. So if a player is a big boy and he has the ability to carry, let his strength be his strength. No, don't discard that. Let his strength be his strength. And then the second thing is, how can you get him to experience something different? maybe he had a very specific experience, very specific functional role within the team, in the attacking team, and he's been operating out of that framework for quite some time. But how can we get him to experience something different, but at the same time develop his skill set, whether it's evasion skills, his other running skills, his handoff, his hit and spin, really understanding that linear space world and the lateral space world. So get him to be repetitively within that different environment, and hopefully under pressure, he will start pulling unconsciously from that new running skills that you've helped him to acquire. So that's what I'm thinking off the cuff. Is there more questions, Wilbur? Or anything on that specifically? I think that's a great question.
Yeah, we've got a question from Coach Joey here. So back to the video. What are the elements that are likely to change the calm mood into an anxious one, besides the music, the noise? Then, what are the process principles or steps one can follow to stay in the calm space? If you are still getting questions, you can ignore this question. No, we'll ask that one, Coach Joey. So, Coach Joey, sorry, I wasn't supposed to read that last part. But Coach Joey is also he's doing an MSc in industrial psychology, so he comes from that perspective as well. So you and Hayley can connect here on this one. I think we can start with Hayley with this one, David.
Yeah.
I think David is going to get into a little bit more of the details of this. But I guess what I hear you saying, Joey, is that and I think that's what we're saying, that the anxieties and those kinds of things do impact on the game, and that really thinking about how to create an environment that eases anxiety. And my sense is that throughout the presentation, as you've said in your comments, that David is going to touch on that lots more, and I'll come in a little bit more later on.
Just make a note there of psychologist Joey Mangala. Hayley, you can continue exploring the impact of internal working model on the environment.
And this speaks directly to Joey's question. I think what we're saying is that if you have a secure internal working model, then you are going to be willing to explore. You'll have a capacity to connect. You'll be much more confident, much more assertive. And then I think the environment that you're going to create because of that. So to answer your question just from this, Joey, I guess what we're saying is that one of the ways is to do the self-reflection and to think about your internal model and work on that, but also then and that in turn will create an environment that's connected, that's safe, that offers shared vulnerability between players and coach. And with an internal model that's secure, you will be able to be creative, much more transparent, much more open, much more willing to play freely. And I think this even kind of touches on Wilbur's question about players. So one of the ways we can, help them with the rigid kind of ways is to create environments where they are able to develop more secure internal working models, as we do ourselves. Yeah. And then if your internal working model is more insecure, you will be more afraid, much more defensive, much more anxious as a coach and as a player. So you can think about these both, because I think as a coach, you're modeling this for players. And then you will also be quite disconnected in your ways of relating to the players on the field. You're disconnected from the spaces around you and disconnected from the coach to player. And your game, of course, will be fear-driven, and your coaching will be fear-driven. That's where all those patterns and rigidity comes in. You'd want control. It will be disconnected, defensive, and often paranoid. So that's when the internal working model is insecure. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to bring a practical example in here. I've got two daughters, the eldest one,
Sure.
Kenny, and the youngest one, Eden, just to maybe give some context. My wife is always on my case because deep inside David Manuel, I'm pretty much insecure as a man. So I've also built a lot of defenses around me, so that I don't feel the feeling of not being enough. So what happens is if my kids are throwing tantrums, my natural defense is to go in control mode and to tell them, okay, be quiet, be quiet. And my wife, obviously through a relationship with Hayley and also her own journey, she also challenges me, David. She always challenges me to say, David, go sit with her and identify what is the need that she has. And sometimes it takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. But once my child feels that I've met a need, the tantrum stops. But what happens a lot of times, her tantrum exposes my not enoughness or my lack of control by experiencing her crying. Then I move to control immediately. But instead of seeing what is a need, where is she at? And once I've met that need, then we can actually move on to the next phase or the next step. I don't know if that can give some context. Just something personal out of my life. It's an ongoing journey.
I think what you're highlighting, it's connected to the next question, is how do you normalize this mental skills approach in your environments? I think it's exactly what you're saying, David. I think what we're saying is it starts with self-awareness. I mean, and it's that cliche kind of quote, you can't change what you don't understand. So, in order to make those changes and to shift something, you need to start with a real understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think yes, and I think it's important, coaches, for as you sit and listening to the sound of my voice, where if you can just do some introspection, make some notes, where do you fit in? Looking at the slide in front of you, what was your first experience within your family? My first family, my father was a policeman. He was rigid as hell. He grew us up as military individuals. We used to wear safari suits, and in the South African context, my hair was swirled, Wilbur, swirl, and then they comb a pathway in my hair, and that's white safari suit cannot be made dirty. And if it's dirty, my father will come down on me as a ton of bricks. So I was very rigid in my way of growing up. And what was the effect then on David Manuel in the now? So if you can maybe think about your first experience of your first team, which is your family, and what effect it now currently has on your working model and your actions and reactions in the now. Just to get a look at the two, the conscious coach and the unconscious coach. If you're conscious of what you're doing, and the other side of the spectrum, you're unconscious of what you're doing. So I just want us to have a look at how it looks. The conscious coach, like Hayley said, very aware, self-aware, aware of the environment, aware of connections that he has with players. Unconscious coach, no awareness, unconscious. Unconscious coach, proactive. Unconscious coach, reactive. Like I said, if I'm not aware of my internal working model, if something happens, I just react from what I'm used to, my default. Conscious coach can actually make a decision in the midst of the heat, in the midst of the situation, whereas unconscious coach, he doesn't have a decision. He acts out of his unconscious under pressure, like that player that is a good ball carrier. If the pressure comes, he goes to his unconscious thought process, which is just moving forward as a ball carrier, Wilbur. So the same from an emotional point of view. So if the pressure comes, what do I react off? What is my go-to as a coach? And how do I start controlling my environment? By screaming at players, by giving them the answer, and the question at the same time? What is it? Vulnerability, I love that word, versus defensive. Conscious coach is there to serve the player. Unconscious coach, a lot of times, is there to serve his own agenda. Well, if there's questions, please just stop me.
Paul wants to ask a question. So Paul, you can go verbally, so you can unmute yourself.
Perfect. Thank you, David. Just a question here. Obviously, you've defined things as the conscious and the unconscious, and I'm not overly bright. But what about the subconscious? So, surely we want players to have the freedom and exploration and feel empowered and all that kind of stuff that you mentioned. But then we also want them to act subconsciously, because we need them to feel things rather than be deliberately in the moment all the time. So where's that third thing that we're not talking about here? Or what impact do you think that might have?
Miles? Good question, Paul.
I mean, Paul, do you want to, it sounds like you have an idea of what the subconscious is. Can you just say what were you thinking? Because I think what David is going to do later is speak about boundaries and setting up a kind of way of being able to be free, but within boundaries, and being able to use that to play almost much more creatively, but also within a system or within a structure. So do you want to say a little bit about what you mean of subconscious?
Well, look, if I've jumped the gun a bit, I'll see what you guys have to say. I'm here to learn. But my kind of feeling is that we've made it black and white here between conscious and unconscious. And there seems to be, in my mind, there's something else that we aspire for players to be able to do. I understand about the internal worker modeling and self-awareness and knowing yourself. I understand about knowing your players and seeing how you can link your inner working model to their working model, or whichever language we use to codify that. But you know, I think it's something that we always try and do, which is why people talk about drilling and people talk about repetition and people talk about context and scenarios and game-based learning and so on. To keep placing athletes and players in scenarios where, when they're faced with the same picture on the field, the decision is autonomous. You know, they can react subconsciously. So I'm just wondering here that we seem to be dividing between conscious and unconscious. That may just be the way you're codifying it, but it was just something that was striking in my mind. That was all.
I mean, I think you know, we are using it in the very psychological sense, but I guess what I hear you saying is exactly what I think David is going to go into a little bit more detail of, is how once you kind of set up the framework and the boundaries, in a sense, and the structures around each player's roles and responsibilities. I'm sorry, David, for jumping the gun, but that in a way that becomes almost automatic, and I think that's what you mean when you're talking about subconscious. But I guess you know, you can come back in again if you have some more questions when David gets there.
I think Paul, that is just my lack of awareness and just using different terms. But what we're actually talking about, I mean, like Wilbur's question about that player, it is something in his subconscious mind that has been repeated over and over, that causes him to respond in a certain way. Are we still on?
So Coach Flash, yes, we're on. But I think Coach Flash's question, I think it's going to be answered hopefully in this slide. But just keep in mind, what is the impact of a coach shouting instruction during training and match have on a player psychologically? But I think you're going to touch, by just reading the heading, I think you're going to touch on this a bit here as well. Yeah.
So just by heading, when our coach environment impacts the individual become a key collaborator of belonging and community. So what I've done in this slide through my experience, some of the coaches currently with me, I think Hayden is on here. Coach Hayden Groepies, great coach, defense, attack coach, also one of my colleagues at the Bulls. We've really went through lengths to really create an environment where players feel safe, where players feel connected, where players can really share vulnerability with one another, shared purpose. So we try to find ways of how does this look practically within our environments. So I just mentioned a couple of things. The environment off the field. This is another thing that I'm very passionate about in terms of the importance of it. You know, I love team rituals and how does that really draw players into your process. I've used numerous different things, whether it is a story, whether it's a theme from a movie, whether, I mean, when I was with the Bulls 2007, we went to the Australian Tens. I used a Gilbert ball, and I said that ball's name was Wilson, and we all bought into the ball whose name was Wilson, and what Wilson represented. It represented a sense of fearlessness, and wherever we went, Wilson went with us. So it's just using different rituals, different symbols, you know, to really draw players into the process and, you know, really get them to connect to something deeper and higher. The environment, from my side, it's the whole peer coaching model. So how can me as a conscious coach, or how can I be conscious of not being in the way of my players getting comfortable to actually starting to coach one another? I think sometimes me as David Manuel lean a lot to control and controlling the environment. And the more I control and the more I take responsibility, the less my players take responsibility and the less they start engaging with one another. But it's due to my lack of awareness. Peer accountability and responsibility. We were huge on, and I know this is something that happens all over the world currently in the rugby community, the importance of, you know, attack groups, certain individuals within your team really owning the review previews and the presentations and the analysis and really co-creating with your team within that environment. Really actively engaging. The importance of questioning versus instructing. I know I shared a bit on that. I think what happens a lot of times within our environments, we ask the question, and if the player takes too long to answer, instead of leaving that space there for the player to fill, we end up filling it ourselves. So then we basically take the opportunity away from the player to, you know, to really explore it with you and really co-creating with you. So that's the important thing for me, really giving them different tasks to develop critical thinking. Environment on the field, giving players a choice. I think this is huge. I've seen it with my children as well. You know, just giving players the opportunity to choose, that motivates them in itself. And how can we create opportunities and platforms in our environment where players can choose? How do you want your week to look? Obviously, depending on where you coach, how much leverage do you give them? How do you want this training session to look? How do you think we need to go this weekend against Harlequins? You know, just really giving them a choice. Do you guys feel you need to rest today? They're tired. Just really giving them a choice. Problem solving, creating different platforms within your training model of how can you get players to really solve problems. A mistake versus failure. Our psychologist in our environment always reminds me, Doc Yanni Botha, he says, David, remember, a mistake is a mistake. A mistake is not failure. If you make a mistake and you understand that it's a mistake, you can still remain focused and go on to the next job. But the moment a player makes a mistake and he goes down that dark tunnel of it's a failure, 80 minutes could pass him by and he will not be able to recover. So just emphasizing it within your environment. Look here, gentlemen, I want you to fail. As your coach, I want you to fail because that's how we learn. Fail. Silent sets. I mean, we had opportunity this year where the coaching staff, we bought some jaffles and something to drink, and we sat far away from the players. And before that, we let them coming into the auditorium. We gave them a session plan. I said, gentlemen, this is your training. Just have a go. And they put out the whole training plan. They went out, did the warm-up, did the whole session. And I think by them coaching themselves, it was a better session that we could actually put together. And it's so amazing. When I'm there, I normally say, I need 3 guys here, I need 2 guys here. Let's get back. And sometimes players forget to do that. But when it was them taking responsibility and ownership for the environment, all of a sudden, they started keeping each other accountable, reminding each other of what is important within this specific drill and what's the context of the drill in terms of what we want to achieve. They ran it themselves. I was astonished. So that silent sets, how can we then keep quiet and allow them to explore themselves? Player feedback, that was a huge focus for us in terms of, really bringing that television on the field. Instead of us giving them feedback of their skills, how can they look at the television and the television can speak back to them? They can look at what they're not doing technically, tactically right, and then how can we then create another opportunity for them to fix it? So we used a lot of, we recorded the huddles, recorded the television sessions where they had with one another. The coaches were just there as a mere resource. They saw themselves, coached themselves, went on to fix it. So that immediate feedback was actually huge. The sacred huddle is also one thing that I want to explore this year. That sacred huddle meaning, where we all come together after a training or before a training and we all huddle along and we ask questions. How can we be creative for that sacred huddle? How can we make 2 huddles, one defense, one attack? And how can we then start talking to one another? They can come together again and explain to one another what was good from a defensive point of view, what was not good from an attacking point of view. How can we have fun? Maybe speaking to Rusty on a webinar the other night, Rusty spoke about really creating, maybe create a scenario of a spy coming in, spying to hear what the other team is saying and coming back with the information. Really make huddles fun and really promote learning within your environment as a backdrop. And then, game constraints, whether it's numbers, whether it's guys rolling, dropping off, different constraints, it forms part of that problem solving. And how can we even get players to put constraints on one another within conditioning games or adaptive games? If they score 2 tries, they have then the green light to tell them, okay, you need to drop 2 guys, reward them. And then they need to think strategically in terms of what constraint can I put on my opponent's team so we can have the upper hand, really playing around with different constraints. And then just the interlude to our next slide, freedom within a structure. I think this is one thing that John Mitchell, he opened my eyes to this, and he said, David, freedom can never bring you structure, but structure can bring freedom. So the two is married together. There's freedom, but within a structure. There's always freedom, but within a boundary. But you can't have freedom without that structure. We can have some conversations on that. Is there any questions, Wilbur, before I move on?
Yeah, I just want to link to what Coach Flash asked, and I think you alluded to when you covered a mistake versus a failure, and I think that is just the impact. So it comes back to what environment do you create practice. Because sometimes we create an environment where players can give input during practice sessions, but once they get onto the field, we want them to do it as we planned, or we pre-planned. I think that comes into that, and I think it's some players, and it's also coming about because I see Mr. Marvin Swartber also mentioned something about knowing your players. But sometimes I've been in an environment where certain players, they function under critique, they function under being shouted at, and some players you need to pull to the side. So it also comes down to knowing your players and what makes them tick on match day or in practice.
Yeah, no, definitely. Any other thoughts? All right, let's move on. I really want to see if I can move on to some rugby things and really transferring that unconscious, subconscious thoughts to really choosing a attack model or a way of playing or a way of doing. If you look at the left, organized, the right, programmed. So I like the word organized. If you look at organized, I'm thinking of chairs just being packed a certain way, but it's not cemented. You can always reorder or reframe the way the chairs are sitting. You can make a circle, you can make a square, you can make a triangle, so the chairs can be organized versus chairs being programmed. If you look at an aeroplane, the chairs are quite fixed, rigid. So you can't reform it, reshape it. That shape, it is what it is. So just the two different thoughts surrounding those terms. So I'm leaning at the moment to the more organized model. You can have a read through this, where David Manuel is currently at. I mean, defense systems are so organized. The line speed that some teams get against you is frightening. So for me, attack always starts at the ball carrier and his ability to win the collision. So I spend a lot of times, whether it's in the gym, whether it's after the gym, whether it's warm-ups, whether it's during training, videos, really focusing a lot on my ball carrier. Where is he biomechanically strong? How can I really give him the penetrating skills to penetrate defenses and really win collisions? Because if we can win the collision there, that will change the defensive picture, and it will also change the defensive speed. So that's where it starts for me. And then one area that I'm going to focus on moving on in this presentation is the importance of functional roles within your attack. And how does that move into your phase play? Options. Phase play, as you can read there, options of 9, 10. What is your pods policy, if you have pods? Momentum versus no momentum. If you do have momentum, what is your policy? Same side, no momentum, do you want to come back? And what is the reason for that? Your rocks placed all over the field, whether it's your 80-20, 60-40, 50-50. Can you go anywhere at any time from that rocks that you've set up. That's important for me. Can we go anywhere? Like that 9 spaces, can we attack all 9 spaces at all times from any given rock at any given time? Patterns of play, that first 3 phases versus zone mindsets. Are you rigid within that first 3 phases, or do you have a policy of, look here, gents, we have one starter move. That starter moves can take us to any space at any time. You choose which is the best option, and then we decide what did we create from that best option. Did we get a line break, clean line break? Well done. What was your uncle? Did we get good momentum? All right, where do we go from there? Did we not get momentum? Where do we go from there? So once again, that organized versus program, not right and wrong, just different ways of looking at things. And then just the top part, an attack system for me. You got the 1-3-3-1, 2-4-2, different ways of spreading forwards, and obviously spreading your backs as well in combination with your forwards. But for me, the thing that I want to highlight is, can it take you anywhere at any time? Metrics within your attack. What is important? What is the 3 key metrics that are important for you? Is it about work off the ball? Is it about return to play? What is the 3 things? Is it conversion rates? What is it that you're going to be measuring weekly to ensure that the guys are focusing on it and really improving on a weekly basis? What is your performance habits? How do you train your performance habits? And just the last thing is, what is the sources that feed you attack? Turnovers, contestables, getting the ball back. What is our 3 key things on counter-attack? What's our 3 key things on turnovers? What is the things that drives our decision-making on that different sources that feeds our attack? Let's stick to space. Well, if there's anything, please let me know. I just don't want to take too much of the guys' time. I understand it's late. Boundary, structure, define space. Hayley, if there's anything that you want to add, please stop me. I said I'm going to highlight one aspect, and is that functional roles within your attack system. So what is a functional role? A functional role is what a specific player is responsible for within your attack system. And I will show you later what it possibly can be. What is important for me about a functional role in terms of what it gives: clear roles and responsibilities to find his space. He knows exactly the space that I'm in, why is that important, and what is my responsibility within that space. Every player is responsible for his own space. Everybody cannot be responsible for everything. So every player has got a mandate, and normally it's your backs that drives your attacking system in terms of what are they responsible for and what are they looking for in terms of getting that communication from the outside in for the team then to make better decisions. Boundaries define what is yours and what is not. I mean, how many times coaches play? Yes.
Sean, ik kan maar oorsit nee, ek gaan gou hierso ek is op dan is ek kom.
Gerard, just your mic, please, brother.
I did mute him.
A lot of times they get confused in terms of, coach, what is mine and what is not. They end up doing each other's jobs, which is not bad when it's the exception, but when that becomes the rule, it becomes chaotic. So your players need to know exactly what am I responsible for and what I'm not responsible for. And there will be the exceptions where they overlap. But for me, I always say that must not be the rule. It must always be the exceptions. Players know where their eyes needs to be. So if they've got a specific space that they function in a specific boundary, they know exactly where their eyes needs to be and where they need to look at in order to get that communication from the outside in, and so that the team then moves the ball to the right space at the right time. The last thing that I want to talk about in terms of priorities, and defining space. So you got your functional role, which is your 3 or 4 things that your players are responsible for, and that within each function, you got a priority of this that assists you. A priority meaning a certain decision-making sequence. What is that I'm looking for first? What am I looking for second? What am I looking for third? So in every function, there's a set of priorities that assist you with making decisions. Let's see if we can bring that together. So normally I use then my backs to drive my attack. Some coaches call them connectors. Some coaches call them drivers. You can be creative in terms of what you call them. So you got your edge attack, which is your 15, 6, 11. And once again, this is my experiences. This is not the way or the that I'm explaining to you guys. This is just my feel. Then you have your 13 that drives the opposite side of the field with one of your loosies. And there's your functional roles. Let's go through the green. So the 15's job will be organization of blind. You can create a stack, same side stack. If there's any questions about that, we can have a chat about it. Organization of lead forward. I'll explain what that lead forward is now in the next slide. Responsible to create width if he finds himself on the open side, and also just to organize that lead forward, is that extra forward depending on what system that you have chosen. Just the next slide, just to give a little bit more clarity. You got your wide rock there, you got your 8, 13 and 14 in the edge there, ball carrier +2. I don't want to send more guys in there unless it's strategy. So if I send the 4th guy in there, you know, he can create a good same side stack for you. Once we've played 3, 1 and 2 off 9, that 4th guy can maybe play a good inside ball from 10 or a late run of 9. So I'll put a 4th guy in that wide rock, but purely strategy. And if that 4th guy gets himself in there, that should be the exception and not the rule. But if he gets himself in there, he can also give us a good 4-man swing on that blindside attack. So once again, for me, it will be strategy. Then you're looking at your 9, his roles. Look at your 10, his roles. So once again, how does his functional role focuses his eyes or his attention of his eyes? He only looks at 10 to 50, pillar 10 to 5, whatever you call it, defense coaches. He's purely looking for that space and maybe for that cross kick space of towards the edge. You see 11 really being in line with 10, so it opens up that wide space with the kick. Then we look at 12. What is his functional role? Organization of midfield. He makes sure he drives that midfield pod in between the 15s. If there's policies within that drives your pods, the 12 is a guy that can drive that policies for you, connecting midfield to the edge. So I love a 12 that's a good distributor. Hey? You know, if you can't pass, it will be difficult for me to give him a shot within the midfield. And obviously, a 13 and 15, you know, how can they play interlinking roles? Because it's not always set in stone. That lead runner is that 7, as I've highlighted him. So that 7 could maybe drop off and he can play with 6 and 15. So we can have a 4-man string within that edge. If you play behind 4 and 5 to 12, or if we play backdoor to 12, 12 can take it to the line, 7 coming off a short line, and once again at the back for 15. But it's 15's job within his functional role responsibilities to guide 7. He's the man that guides 7, not 6, not 11, not 5, not 4, not 12. 15 is the guy that runs the lead runner. It comes under his responsibilities. So just looking at functional roles quickly. So we're playing it off 9. Really, that could maybe be a 18-20 rock. We've put up that 80-20 rock purposefully. We might have lost some momentum there, so we're deciding, look here, 10 goes same side. We get a good work rate off the ball. We get a good set, right? And now we can have a go on that blind. So for me, I want to bring priorities within it. If you can look at that blindside attack, there's a 15, there's a 6, there's 11. So there you have a 3-man string. So I call it 3-man strings, 4-man strings, 5-man string, 6-man strings. But that's a little structure or a boundary. But in that structure, there is priorities that 15 has, which is our first hands. So if you can see, 11 is in line with 15. So what could be 15's priorities? So in my head, 15 can look maybe for the spacing behind. That's the first priority. 11 is flat enough to get there. 15 can look for the flat ball past 6 to 11, because 11 again is flat enough. Or 15 can play 6, whoever's the second arrival early, and then 6 or 11, whoever's the second hands, they can make a decision. How does 15's priorities influence 11's priorities? So 11 knows exactly in terms of his first priority, he needs to be flat, aligned with 15. Second priority for the pass, flat pass of 15. He needs to be flat and remain flat of 15 for that second priority, which is the skip pass. And if 15 plays 6 early, he knows he needs to drop himself off to play then to receive a pass from 6 for that last pass if 14 maybe makes a bad read. So in this case, we played the blind. 15 was nice and wide of the rock. 13 felt insecure, he jammed in. And 11 could maybe play that space that you see in front of you. So I want you guys to see how there's a 3-man structure within the functional role of 15, but how priorities assist ball carriers to make the decision. So Martin, if you speak about that subconscious mind and the effects of constant repetition, my job is to make sure I get 6, 11, 15s, my outside backs and my loosies. I train this type of scenarios consistently. Blindside attack, open side attack. What is our functional roles? What is your priorities within these functional roles? What do we look for first 15? What do you look for second 15? What do you look for third 15? So they just get so fluent with their decision makings, and if they're confronted with that within a game, hopefully they will draw from their subconsciousness and they will make a good decision. Any questions on that? That is just one example of a functional role and how priorities assist within an attacking decision or an attacking action within a structure. Is there any questions?
So David, we've got a question, but it's Coach Joey asked a question about mistakes versus failure, but we can ask that closer to the end. But there's no real questions on what you're discussing now.
All right, so for me, it's
David.
Yes.
Sorry, it's Nico here. Can I maybe ask a question, please?
Yes, Nick.
So I know you talk about the different spaces. There's 9 different spaces that you can attack. Who's the main driver of identifying the different spaces? Let's say they identify a space on the blind and they identify a space out wide. Who is in control of that?
So for me, if you look at this picture here, Nick, you got your 15 on the blind side. So your 15, if you look at the functional roles, it is his functional role to drive the blind attack. So he needs to get 9. He needs to communicate to 9 in terms of what is on. So he drives that blindside attack. And if the game is on the opposite side, where's the 13, he drives the open side attack. So every guy's got a specific functional role within the face play options that they're responsible for. And obviously your 10 is a big key pin in terms of where he wants the ball to go and what he sees happening in front of him. I mean, he's got a lot of authority, But there's the 15, the 12, the 13. That's part of the connectors or the drivers that help him see where spaces is, and they will communicate as early as possible from the inside out. What will also help Nico, if you look at this ruck, so I will tell 15, look here, if you don't get momentum of 9, the defensive coaches will tell you they will win the race around the corner on the fold. But a lot of times on the negative side, they slow to set. And that's exactly what the 15 needs to look at. If you don't get momentum, the 15 is the guy to tell the 9, let's go back on the blind. So that is part of the 15's functional role. If you're looking at the space out wide, my 14s will always align themselves flat to whoever carries the ball. So that always opens up the bridge pass over the top, or the corner kick, the kick pass option to the edges. They're not moving from deep to flat. They're moving from flat to deep in terms of their priorities. Does that answer your question, Nico?
I think it does. I'm just doing the question on, if you have an 80-20 ruck compared to a 60-40, do you have different policies in place, or do you still just play the space that's available?
Yeah, so once again, that do we have numerical advantage, or did we get momentum or no momentum? That is huge decision-making cues for, in this case, the 15. I would say the only defense coaches will probably train that 80-20 ruck in terms of how many guys they put in that space on the blind. They'll train a 60-40 in terms of how many guys they will defend on the blind with. I will always make that 10 be a little bit more alive on that 60-40, just to add another number in that space. And then we also look at what they're doing in the backfield. Where does the space open up? Is it in behind? Is it through? Is it around? You know, where do we need to go from there? So it's important for me to explore with my players. Look here, if you have an 80-20 ruck, what's going to be our numbers on the blind? If you have a 60-40 ruck, what will be our process on the blind? And what is then our priorities in terms of what we look for first, second, third? If you have a middle ruck, a 50-50, a lot of defense coaches will tell you that's difficult, the ruck to defend. Can we go anywhere at any time? Can we go anywhere at any space at any time? Through how our numbers and our bodies are spread throughout the field.
Thanks, Coachy.
Any other questions?
Nothing on this. So Coach Paul just commented on other Paul's question. But I think that's a discussion that we can maybe have closer to the end, and then Joey's question, Coach Joey's question, we can also deal with closer to the end.
All right, so let me end off, Wilbur. I think just to bring the two worlds together, I really wanted us to see on the effects of the unconscious on the conscious mind. And also then, like Martin just made us aware of, how our environment and the value of repetition, how that starts landing in our subconsciousness, and how we start making decisions under pressure out of our subconscious. So just the effects of how that has our unconscious on us choosing a game model, an attack model, how it influences our environment, how it will influences our leadership model. It will affect every model. So for me, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about being aware. Because as a coach that is aware, as a coach that is conscious, sometimes I have to be hard on my players, and sometimes I have to be a little bit more understanding. But if I'm a conscious coach, I have a choice. I can discern within the moment in terms of what is needed within that specific moment. If I'm not conscious, if I'm unconscious, I might react in a certain way, and I could lose a player forever or for that campaign. So just a slogan to end off with: you have to understand most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inured, I don't know what it means, but I like what it says onwards, so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it. And then this my last thing is, gentlemen, are we ready to be unplugged? So let's give a 5 or 10 minutes some extra questions. Willa, let's go for it.
Yes. So I'm going to go back to Coach Joey's question. So you asked, you said we spoke about it. You spoke about it's okay to fail and make mistakes. Because he said it's fair enough, and mistakes are likely to happen. However, there are ever consequences to errors, sometimes dire consequences. How do you strike the balance between accountability and it's okay to make mistakes? In essence, where do you draw the line?
Hayley, can you maybe come in there? I've got some ideas, Hales. Are you still there, Hayley?
I am here. I'm here. No, I mean, I guess I think what I'm more curious about your question than I have an answer, Joey, and I'd want to know what would be the detrimental consequences you speak of. Maybe that will help me to understand.
Yeah,
I mean, I got some fantasies about winning and losing.
Yeah. So I think what Coach Joey is maybe touching on is losing a match or losing a competition, and it might lead up to a coach losing his job. So that consequence. But if I can jump in here, just a few points that I want to make is that we can create a culture where it's okay that players try things, new things, and take risk and make mistakes, but you still create high standards, because I think it's important to create a culture where players can express themselves, but there needs to be a sense of accountability. So if you're making the same mistake over and over, then you're not taking accountability for that area. If it's a skill, let's say it's a weakness within your skill or a weakness in execution, then we need to put in the effort to improve it. But if we're going to allow it, that's going to create a culture of low standards. So it comes down, for me, first thing is create a culture where I always speak about, if you make a mistake, but you put in the effort and you went full out, then it's fine. Then we need to improve it and we need to correct it. But if you're making a mistake just for the sake of making a mistake, then you've got low standards.
I think there's a good saying that says, freedom without responsibility leads to chaos. Responsibility without freedom leads to rebellion. Freedom with responsibility leads to maturity. So how can we create an environment that will lead to maturity, because it has both aspects? There's freedom to play within your functional role, within the bigger theme of things, but there's a sense of responsibility of my actions. We know the detriments of making a mistake. Joey, I know you're speaking as an attack coach there, and as a defense coach, our attack coaches, we just go rampant sometimes and disrespectful to you guys. But how can we create an environment where they free plus responsibility, and how can we create then that matured players that will make good decisions at the right time, at the right place?
Yeah.
Only that answers the question.
I think, yeah.
I mean, and I guess what's implicit in what you're saying, both of you, is that in a way there are always consequences, and that's inevitable. But and I guess what would be important is that, I mean, that you can meter out those consequences in a way that's helpful and constructive for the player. But that, of course, your actions will have consequences, even if they are unintended. But I mean, I guess for all coaches, that's always the balance that you have to kind of strike. And as Wilbur mentions, there's real consequences that need to be thought about. But I think that's the hard work of being a coach, straddling that line and trying to, be a support and mentoring, but also metering out the consequences when it has to.
Definitely.
Oh. Okay, so thanks for that, Hayley and David. We're going to move on to the next. It's actually there's a comment, and then and then there's a question as well. So Coach Paul commented on Paul's question earlier about subconscious. Are we not conscious, coach? So he makes a statement and then he went on to a question. Are we not conscious coaches? Coaching by doing more focus on the mechanical as opposed to coaching where players unconsciously move into a state of flow. So could the starting level be conscious coaching, but the holy grail of unconscious competence coaching is vastly untapped? Moving from a doing to a being. That's a lot. He makes a comment. That's a lot, I know. So yeah, so it's a typical Coach Paul.
It's deep. It's deep.
It's deep. He's deep. He's deep to know.
How do we unpack that, Hayley?
I mean, I'd love him to say a little more of what he means, but I guess what comes into my mind immediately is just, I think it's a question. I mean, and I guess what he's grappling with is this idea that you've just suggested in freedom in structure, that in order to create an environment where players can be free to flow, there needs to be boundaries, as is in anything. And so I guess to try and think of those kind of priorities or functional roles that you're suggesting as more boundaries, not rigid kind of this is what you have to do. And if you can create within players that these are the things, this is the parameters in which you can work, these are your tools to go out and work, but how you choose to use them. And I think there's a safety and there's a security for anyone to have a framework within which to be creative. And so I think to think of those boundaries that you've suggested and key functional roles as much more looser than strict and rigid patterns, but just a framework for the player to set himself up in so that he can be free to create and explore what he feels is, or instinctually knows to be the right move in that moment.
I'm thinking about my children. If they play outside, I will tell them, Kenyan Ili, this is the space you'll have to, this is the boundary that you operate in, and within that boundary, just feel free. I think every now and again they will look at where Dada is sitting, but within that boundary, they have a ball. They're not thinking at that specific time, oh, Dada had a salary cut. How are we gonna have to sell lemonade tomorrow morning so Dada can make his money? How are we gonna pay for food this month? No, there's a boundary, and within that boundary, they emotionally free, emotionally resilient, technically, tactically equipped, and within that boundary, they just have a ball. I think that's where the flow comes from. They can just flow. Look at what's happening in front of you, and within their functional role, just make good decisions. That's how I see it.
So there's a follow-on, but I just unlucky that we couldn't get Coach Paul's mic on because other Paul commented now. Does unconscious not mean unable to respond, and we want to be able and alert to respond and act and be proactive? Coach Paul responded that unconscious, the other Paul responded that unconscious competence is something different. Those are the coaches who are remembered. So I'm not sure if it's linked to what other Paul question, but I think, Hayley, I don't know if you want to jump in here. So Paul asked, does unconscious not mean unable to respond?
Yeah. I mean, I think when we say unconscious, we mean those things that we are not aware of. We are unable to, access. So that's when we are defensive, anxious, fearful. And so the consciousness we're talking about is being able to be alert, aware. I think exactly that. So the unconsciousness is the defensive. Being conscious is being able to be alert, creative, proactive,
innovative. Yes.
Yeah. So I want to jump off from the conscious versus unconscious to more attack, because I've read what I've reading now the last 10 years in the media that defense have evolved and defense system is unbreakable. Sorry, Coach Joey, that defense has developed these systems that attack can't come true. So where are we moving with attack from your perspective, Coach David? How will we get to a stage where attack will dominate defense again? And how do we create that attacking shape or that attacking mindset?
I think a lot's got to do with the rules of the game. You know, sometimes the rules of the game leans more to the attacking team, and sometimes it leans more to the defensive team. But I think the world is its oyster. I mean, as attacking coaches, I mean, I believe in flexibilities. That's why it's so important for me in terms of the conscious coaching model. How can I be conscious? And that gives me the ability to make decisions. So if I play against this specific team, all right, they're a little bit more structured. So how can I get them a little bit more unstructured so they can play more on my field and on my terms? And if I'm playing against a team from the Boerland, they want to just move and create turnovers and lose balls. How can I make it a little bit more structured? So I think if you're a conscious coach and you create an environment where players understand it's about adaptation, who are we playing against? What is needed for us to be successful over the weekend, and how can we adapt to that? You know, that's how I'm speaking about Wilbur. It's not about right and wrong. It's about adaptability. And does your attacking system have that capacity? And again, your players have the capacity to mix things up in terms of what they need and what the game demands on that specific day. But yes, I think there's a lot of room for attack. I mean, there's so many different systems out there, but I mean, there's room for more. Let's keep on exploring it. Huh?
I think I like being flexible, and I think we also need to evolve with time. And I was questioning a group of coaches the other day. Someone decided that 1-3-3-1 is a system that we can utilize. Why not? Why haven't someone decided on a 7-1 or 4-4? So we need to evolve, and because there needed to be a reasoning behind it. So we need to explore. We shouldn't come in the habit and just accepting things because it's being done that way. Professional teams are doing it. So we need to evolve and really look at what you have skill-wise, and then look at your makeup of your team and decide this is how we're going to attack. Because I think from an attacking perspective, we're falling into the trap of we're just doing what other people are doing. And if you remember back to what Coach Peter de Villiers said 2 weeks ago, is that we became so good at copying that we forget to coach. And that's, I think, where we are with attack.
Paul Gus could ask a question there, Wilbur. Does unconscious,
Yeah, so we did deal with that.
We did deal with that. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So I'm going to end off with with one question for each of you. How does David Manuel improve himself? How do you upskill yourself? How do you educate yourself?
I've a philosophy where I said, if I meet people, my job is to make sure that Dr. Wilbur Clark, he needs to die empty when he dies at the end of the day. So I need to suck you dry for every information that you have, Wilbur. And so when you go to that grave one day, you don't make that grave rich by potential laying there and it has never been tapped. So how can I, as Steve Jobs speaks about it, it's about remaining foolish. I want to remain foolish until I die one day. So that means I can learn from anyone. I can learn from my kids. I can learn from anyone that I can get in contact with. So it's just about taking up as much as I can. And it's also about, I mean, we had a good time in this lockdown. You know, Paul True really created a good opportunity for us to meet a lot of coaches and just to find out what do they do in their specific systems. You know what I mean? It's about just opening yourself up for learning, and then from that, just deriving what do I take along with me in this journey, and what do I then shed, and not take along.
Yeah. Then Hayley. So there's been a lot of, especially in these times, there's been a lot of talk about mental health, specifically on coaches. What is your view on this, and how can we, from a psychological perspective, how can we address it from for coaches? How can we look at their mental health? What aspects should we look at? Should there be specific interventions?
I mean, I think that's such an important question now, but always. And I think because, mental health is so stigmatized, I think the starting point for me, Wilbur, is to, be aware and speak out a little more about the fact that we need to be taking care of our mental well-being, and just saying that out loud to one another, and creating spaces where coaches and players speak more and share more and connect more, I think would be a great starting point. I think we're only as sick as our silence. We're only as unwell as our secrets and our silence. So just being much more open and creating spaces where people can share their vulnerabilities and anxieties would be a great starting point.
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes very difficult for men, because we don't want to show that vulnerability. We don't want to be in a space or in an environment that we are vulnerable, and I think that should be put yourself in that vulnerable position so that people can see who the person behind the person is and who you really are. So I think that's a great response. So Hayley, thanks for that. Coach David, Hayley, I want to really thank you guys. I think you've touched on a topic that is close to my heart as well tonight, and I think we should be open-minded about how we approach coaching. So like defense is evolving, attack is evolving. Coaches also need to evolve and look after themselves. So I want to really thank you for coming out and sharing knowledge and being open to answer questions that sometimes we're uncertain about. And I also want to wish both of you well. Coach David, I know you also at a transition time with your coaching. I want to wish you well, but I think the message needs to go out and be authentic. That needs to be Coach David.
Yes.
That's what it needs to be. Hayley, good luck with your career as well. I know it's a difficult time for you, especially working in the educational psychology environment during this time. So good luck to you as well, and thanks for coming. And then for our attendees, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. And then Coach Paul Goss said, I'll set up a meeting between yourself, Coach Paul, and David, and we continue that conversation. But thanks for coming. Just next week we're looking at mentoring. Maybe that could assist with dealing with that mental health issues. And then we'll end our webinar series 2 weeks time with getting Coach Peter Duff back. And then so I'll send the recording to everyone. Please share it amongst your friends, your colleagues, your coaches, and your network. And then have a blessed week and stay safe.
Thank you, Coach Dr. Wilbur. Thank you, Hayley. Thank you, coaches.